is what I squared has, the name has changed, but everything else is the same. So. And the strategic waiver school system came about due to a state law that requires every school system in Georgia to notify the Department of Ed, and that had to take place by June 30th, if they would be a strategic waiver school system, a charter system, or what they originally called status quo, and which is now called Title 20, no waivers. And the Paulding County School District chose to go strategic waiver school system. So what is that? Strategic waiver school system describes a district that goes into a contract with the State Board of Ed. And in the past, we have been able to ask for waivers when we needed them for certain things as a district. Well, moving forward, as of June 30th, we will no longer be able to ask for waivers unless we go into a contract with the state. The two contracts that can still receive waivers are the strategic waiver school system and the charter system. The status quo will not be able to receive waivers except if there are extreme circumstances. So our district went with the strategic waiver school system, which we kind of call I squared was a little easier to say, but we call it SWSS. And there are two parts to the strategic waiver school system. Basically, the academic and performance targets that we will be held accountable to, and the waivers that we have requested. And in order to receive waivers, part of the contract is we will be able to ask for waivers and receive them in order for increased accountability on our part as a school district. So we don't just go in and say, hey, we want waivers. We do have to say we are going to increase our growth with our students. So it's kind of a give and take situation. The state is giving us waivers, and in return, we are going to show increased growth with our students. So why did we choose the strategic waiver school system? We chose that one because it gives our district more autonomy. It gives us the flexibility to think of innovative ways that we can work with our students to meet their needs without being tied to certain laws and rules that we were originally tied to. The contract is for 7 years, and the first year is a baseline year where we collect data, and it gives the state baseline data to set targets. And that is this school year. So this school year is our first year of the contract. The state will look at our assessment scores from this year, and then the following year, in January of 2017, they will set targets that we will reach every year for the next 5 years. The 7th year, they will look at all of the data for the past 5 or 6 years, see if we have met our goals, and that will be the end of our contract. The contract contains several things, or the application. The application involves a strategic plan to show where our district is, where we feel like our priorities are, what we need to focus on, and where we need to move forward. The contract that we sign with the state, the waivers that we have requested, which laws and rules we want to waive so that we can meet the needs of our students, the accountability goals of how are we going to be held accountable for doing what we need to do to make sure our students are showing growth. There are consequences if we don't meet those goals. And then there are school plans. Part of the application involves a plan for each school in our district to show where they are now and then to set targets of where they'll go in the future. And I'm very proud to say that our application was approved on June 11th. So we are moving forward, and we're very excited about starting this program in our county. The waivers that we included, there were 4 that we had to include at least one. And those are state laws or state rules. And the 4 that we had to include one of was certification, class size, expenditure controls, and salary schedules. And we actually included all of those in our application. When you see the list of waivers that we included, it does not mean that we will use every single one of those. We had to include every waiver that we thought we might need in the next 5 years when we developed our application, because you can't go back and forth and add them. Once you do your application, we can make amendments with extenuating circumstances, but we needed to put everything that we thought might be a law or a rule that we would waive in the future, just in case we needed it. So everything that's listed is not necessarily a waiver right now. It's something that is there if we need it to meet the needs of our students in the future. And you can see on the second page and going on to page 3, the list of those. They involve certification, they involve class size, they involve expenditures, report cards. The report card one is for our 4th and 5th grade students so that we can do our standards-based report card. So all of these laws and rules are the ones that we included in our waiver so that if we need them in the future, we'll have access to waive those rules so we can meet the needs of our students. Now, the accountability part of our application in our contract involves 2 main parts, and the first one is set by the state, and that involves our CCRPI. CCRPI is kind of how we're measured as a school and as a district. It is part of something that took place of AYP for the state of Georgia. So every year, a school will receive a CCRPI score. And the score can go to 100 and sometimes a little over 100 with bonus points. And so the accountability piece for Strategic Waiver School System, that they're looking at our CCRPI score and increasing growth in 3 ways. And the first one involves our score. And it's the 3% increase every year for the 5-year period for each individual school. And if you'll look at the example on the bottom of page 3, say you had a school that had a CCRPI score of 60. They take the difference of the score from 100, which would be 40, and they multiply that times 3%. So if you had a CCRPI score of 60 and your goal was 3%, it is 3%, your goal would be 1.2 for an annual increase for the next 5 years. So for the first year, your goal would be 61.2. Then it would increase to 62.4 on up to 66.0 by the end of that 5-year period. So you can see it's small increments of growth that are expected for each year, and it is by school instead of for the district. They also wanted to look at schools that were already performing at a higher level, and those are schools that are in the top quartile. And that means that the school scored, their CCRPI score was in the top 25% across the state of Georgia. And if you look at the last page, there's a chart that shows you where our schools are for Paulding County and where the state scores are. If you'll look at it by level, elementary, the statewide range of scores for CCRPI were from 32.6 to 100.7. For Paulding County, our range was 58.2 to 91.0. The state average score was 72.6, and Paulding County average was just above that at 72.9. 14 of our 19 elementary schools were above the state average, and we had 3 elementary schools in that top quartile. Those are Burnt Hickory, Russell Elementary, and Shelton Elementary. For middle school, the range was 21.3 to 102.1. In our schools, the range was a much closer range, was 66.4 to 91. The state average for middle schools was 73.1, and we were just a little above that again in Paulding County at 73.2. 6 of our 9 middle schools were above the state average. The top quartile for middle school was 83.1 and above, and 2 of our middle schools fell into the top quartile, and those were McClure and Moses middle schools. For high school, the range was 22.4 to 99.5, and the range for Paulding County was 65.8 to 72.6. The state average was 68.3, and again, we were above the state average at 69.3. 4 out of our 5 high schools fell above the state average, and the top quartile for this high school level was 74.5 and above. So we had 5 of our schools already falling into that top quartile. Now this will not count for baseline data. This was for 13-14 school year. And last year's scores we do not have for CCRPI yet. So we will be calculating that when we get the scores for this year, which will be next year. So we're looking at data that's not out there yet for Strategic Waiver School System, but that's just an example of where we are with our last CCRPI scores. If you'll turn back to I think page 4, there's one additional way that we can meet our goal with CCRPI, if a school does not meet the 3% goal and they're not in that top quartile, they can be deemed meeting their goal by what they call beating the odds. And that is looking at that school and how they scored on CCRPI and looking at schools across the state that have similar demographics and seeing if they scored above those schools. So what the state really thinks is that when you look at schools that are similar across the state, their CCRPI scores should be about the same. If this school that didn't meet their growth was a little bit higher than the other schools, then they will say they met their goal because they scored higher than expected. So there are 3 ways that you can meet your goal with CCRPI. One is your 3% growth, one is the remaining in the top quartile of the state, and the other is with beating the odds. And that is what the state has given us as our accountability measures. The Paulding County School District added another measure, and that is Goal 2, that says that we will engage in sound financial practices which result in economic stability for our school district. We have 3 action steps under that goal, and that is maintaining exemplary practices with regards to accounting and our financial reporting. We will annually engage external auditors to do an independent audit report. And we will also develop an annual budget that is based on the needs of our students, the needs of our school, and making sure we are also maintaining long-term financial stability for our school district. And the measure for that will be a satisfactory audit report each year and a fiscally responsible general budget that's developed each year. We do have consequences if we don't meet our goals, and those consequences are really for each school. Starting off, in the first 2 years, if a school does not meet their goals with their growth, then we'll really work with that school on developing a school improvement plan, looking at where they did not meet and how we can help that school to meet in those areas. And the plan will be developed by the school and the district working together and monitoring what's going on with those schools from the district level. If during years 3 and 4, as we get through this contract, a school is still not meeting their goals, we'll do more intensive training with the staff and more intensive support, and the district will be more focused with their school improvement plan and really focusing on what those deficits are, what we need to work on with them, and monitoring at the district level again for that. At the very end of our contract, if the district has not met the goals, then we would lose our flexibility according to our contract now. So that is at the end of our 7 years with the contract. So where are we in this process? It's been a little lengthy. It started last fall. We had some presentations about what the different options were. In October, our board decided that, and our school district decided that we needed to go the I squared or SWSS route. And we submitted a letter of intent to the state to say that that's the direction we wanted to go. We began the process of developing our application, and we worked with many stakeholders in our district. We worked with schools, principals, community, to kind of see what direction we wanted our application to go in, what waivers we thought our school district needed, what would help our students the most. We submitted a draft application to the state in February. We held a public hearing to share the information, and we had a great turnout at that hearing, very large turnout. So it was nice to have community members come out to see what was going on. Then we submitted a revised draft to the state in May and met with the Governor's Office of Student Achievement and the Department of Ed and tweaked our draft and application just a little bit. It was approved and resubmitted. We held another public hearing to share our draft before we took it to our local school board. The local school board then approved it. We submitted it to the state, and we were approved on June 11th. So it's been a great process, and we are starting this year with our baseline data. We will receive our targets from the Governor's Office of Student Achievement next year, a year from this January. It is going to take a little while to get scores in and for that to get going. But we are kind of monitoring what's going on ourselves and watching for growth. And working with all of our schools to make sure that our schools are going in the right direction, and we're going to have that growth before we even have the targets. So thank you for inviting us out today. It's great to share the wonderful things that are going on in our district with you, and I appreciate your time.